Good evening, everybody. Here we are again on the floor. All right, so today we're going to react to all of my book statistics. As you can see, we are still in my childhood bedroom. Don't look in this corner, just look at this corner. This is the cozy corner. Okay, I haven't looked at any of my statistics yet, so I'm actually really excited to find out what sort of tendencies I've exhibited this year, or last year, I guess. Okay, so let's start with Goodreads, because they always have the most boring statistics. Here it is. Go to your 2024 year in books. All right, I'm excited. So it looks like I read 34 books last year. I honestly have no idea if this is accurate or not. We'll find out once I get to my spreadsheet. But I mean, it sounds about right. It's much less than I read last year. I think last year I read 50 something or maybe 60 something, but it's okay. I think I had a lot going on this year, so I didn't really have the time nor really the motivation to read that much. And I think most of them also weren't with audiobooks, if I remember correctly. Like a lot of them were classics actually. But anyway, I read 10,824 pages across 34 books. The longest book that I read was Earthsea, the first 4 books by Ursula K. Le Guin at 890 pages. And the shortest book I read is a selected poetry collection by Rainer Maria Rilke at 93 books. I have actually both of them right there. The average book length that I read in 2024 was 318, which honestly sounds about right. I feel like it's pretty close to what I usually read. The most shelved book that I read was Dracula by Bram Stoker, and the least shelved was Said It Aloud and Heard It Die Away, who only 2 people have shelved this. Wait, 2 people? I thought I was the only one. Holy shit, wait, what? Wait, I gotta check this out. Who else has shelved this book? 1 rating, 1 review. Yeah, that's me, bitch. Who the hell is the other person? Okay, it doesn't say, I guess, but 2 people have that book shelved. It's a translation of the Sonnets to Orpheus by Rainer Maria Rilke, but it's a very bad translation. So I don't even know, like, I don't even know how the fuck my library found this book, because literally no one has read it. So like, where the hell did they get it? But the most is Dracula by Bram Stoker, which doesn't surprise me. Like, it's a classic and it's pretty famous. So my average rating for 2024 is 3.8. Pretty good. That means I read a lot of good books this year. The highest rated on Goodreads is The Sunshine Court by Nora Sakovic. Legend! But honestly, that makes sense because it's most likely been read by people who already love this series, so you know, that makes sense. My first review was of Earthsea, the first 4 books, where I give it 5 stars, and then we get to a collage of all of the books that I read in 2024. Then we get to my last review of the year, which is The Unbearable Lightness of Being, which I gave 3 stars. And that's about it for Goodreads, I think. See, this is what I mean. They have like the most fucking basic statistics I've ever seen. Like, they could have just done a little bit more this year, I feel like. But as we all know, Goodreads is a janky ass fucking website that does the bare minimum. So honestly, I don't know what I'm expecting at this point. I do want to check my stats real quick though. Yeah, so last year I read 66 books. And this year I read 34. Let's see, with pages. Yeah, last year was 18,593. Yeah, that sounds about right. Okay, now let's move on to storygraph. The storygraph, all right, for 2024. Oh, there's a wrap up. Let's have a look at this one. Okay, congratulations on a brilliant reading year. You finished reading 31 books. Okay, so it's 31, not 34, across 10,490 pages. Wait, how is it 3 books less, but it's like the same amount of pages? Like, I don't get it. First book that I read was Earthsea by Ursula K. Le Guin. Last book that I read was The Unbearable Lightness of Being. Here we have my mood map. It's so funny. Like every single year, my mood map just fucking dips during spring and summer. I guess I'm just like feeling so fucking depressed in spring and summer. But honestly, that makes sense because that's when my allergies start attacking me. So I'm not surprised, to be honest. I always start really light in the year, I guess. And then it's just kind of stable throughout the rest of the year. And here we have some more graphs. Wait, what does it say? You explored the shadows of the human psyche, traversed landscapes of the heart, and engaged in introspective musings. The narratives flowed at a comfortable, engaging tempo. We have a graph. I read the most in July, which makes sense. I think I read 8 books. Yeah, 8 books. And I read a lot towards the end because I borrowed a lot of books from my library and I felt a lot of pressure like reading them and finishing them so that I could return them again. I guess like even though my brain fucking hates deadlines, it also can't live without them. Okay, the most genres that I read in 2024 is literary, classics, LGBTQIA+, romance, I don't know, and fantasy. Wait, romance? I'm kind of curious. The longest book that I read was Earthsea, the first 4 books. Shortest is Selected Poems by Rilke. We know this. The average length of the books you read was 330 pages, and it took you around 11 days to finish each book. That sounds about right. The least time spent was Macbeth, and the most time spent was Dracula. That makes sense because I didn't listen to the audiobook for Dracula because I was heavily annotating it and I was getting a bit annoyed by having to pause the audiobook every time I wanted to write something, so I just decided to read it without it. Of course, that meant I read it a lot slower than if I had listened to the audiobook at the same time. But honestly, it was worth it because I had so much fun. The authors I spent the most time with in 2024 was Rainer Maria Rilke. I read 3 of his work. William Shakespeare, read 3 of his work. And Ursula K. Le Guin, I read 2 of her works. And my average rating is 3.75, which makes sense that it's a bit more precise because it includes like quarter points, so that makes sense. And my 2024 5-star reads. Wait, is this it? Did I only mark 8 books 5 stars? Listen, I'm very picky, okay? This is also why my rating is so low despite having read mostly good books, okay? But yeah, this is pretty accurate. I love that the Sunshine Court is like in between 2 William Shakespeare's. Like, that's so... I love that. That just tells you everything about me. Some months were better than others. In June, was my highest rated month. I think I only read 1 book that month. I don't know. Turns out February wasn't your favorite month with an average rating of 2.38. What the hell did I read in February? I have no idea. Other Storygraph users and your 2024 reads. Yeah. Dracula and Her to Die Away. And the highest rated, that's interesting. The highest rated on Storygraph was How to Save Babylon by Sophie Sinclair. She fucking deserves that shit. I gave her 5 stars. You explored the works of 19 new authors, including Olivia Atwater, Gillian Flynn, and Minne Mizumura. I hate that Sharp Objects is the one that's here. I know why, because it's the most popular, but I did not like that book. I wish they'd put like literally any other book. 7 of the books you read were part of a series. Were they really? I guess we'll find out in my spreadsheet. You visited a total of 2 books this year. You revisited, A Room with a View and what else? I have no idea. Oh, we can open link a new tab. Seaside Stranger. Yeah, I decided to reread this manga. I don't know why. I remember it was recommended to me on Twitter, I think a couple of years ago when I was on Twitter. I don't have Twitter now. I don't really see the point of having a Twitter because I don't really like Twitter as a platform, to be honest. I'm mostly on Tumblr. And no, I don't have a reading blog, so don't ask me for my handle. You will not get it. But pretty much like Tumblr and now YouTube is like the only 2 platforms that I'm actually active on. I don't really use Instagram and I'm not on Twitter, and I'm definitely not on TikTok. I don't even have the app. What was my point with this? Oh yeah, but it was recommended to me on Twitter a couple of years ago. I don't know why I decided to reread it. I guess I was just like in the mood for like a manga. I think I was in a pretty bad slump and I wanted to reread just anything, and this was pretty short. It's a pretty short manga. I think there's only like 2 or 3 volumes. So I just decided to reread it just for fun. It's pretty good because it's about like gay man. Like he meets his partner after his partner's mom dies, and it's just kind of like about the main character like coming to terms with being gay and like reconnecting with his estranged family. It's pretty good. Like I would recommend it, to be honest. You decided not to finish 4 of the books you picked up this year. Let's have a look at them because I'm kind of curious. I already forgot. So one of them is, wait, what? Why is it saying Yumi and the Nightmare Painter that I didn't finish that one? I definitely finished that one. It even says red. What? What the fuck? Okay, storygraph is confused, I guess. But one of them was definitely Icarus. I remember I tried to get into it. I listened to the audiobook through Libby because I borrowed it through my library. And I think the first sentence was like Harper Teens or something, and I immediately knew that it wasn't anything for me. But I decided to give it a chance anyway, just because I'd already borrowed it and I didn't think, you know, it was really fair to just drop it just because it's like for teens. I was like, well, some, you know, books for teenagers are good, so let me just see if I will like this one. I didn't. The writing is very juvenile, and the main character, he's supposed to be like an art thief, but he's like the worst fucking art thief I've ever read about. And I felt like the situations were a bit too cartoonish and not really that nuanced, and I just did not like trust the author to handle any of like the themes or any of the problems that the teenagers face in the story with any real care or like grace, if that makes sense. So I decided to drop it at 30% or something. I don't know. I actually got a good chunk in there, but then I just decided to drop it because I was like, I realized that I was just not into it, so I didn't see any point in trying to finish it. Other book that I didn't finish was mostly Dead Things. I just was not interested. I thought it was pretty boring, even though I did like the themes and what it was talking about. Like, it's about grief, but I think the way it was written just wasn't really for me. It was just a bit too dry for me, but I would still recommend it in case like anyone is interested in like a book about grief, because that's really all it's about. The other book that I did not finish was Butter Honey Pick Bread. Yeah, I didn't really like it. It didn't really interest me, and that's really all I have to say about it. You read 2 books from your own shelves this year. That's actually not true. I've forgotten to indicate like which books I own, but pretty much all of this Shakespeare that I read this year, I have a copy of. They are on my shelf, and I'm pretty sure, wait, let me look through. I also own Maurice, and I own A Room with a View. I own Inheritance from Mother. I own Rainer Maria. Why is it saying that I only, I don't know, but I own a lot of, like, I decided to read mostly from my own shelves this year or last year, because I own a lot of books that I haven't read. So I was like, well, we're gonna put a stop to that. Okay, we're putting a fucking stop to that. So I decided to read mostly books that I own, and that's really it. That's all. That's my wrap up. So let's move on to my stats. I did not meet my pages goal. My pages goal is always 12,000, just because, I don't know, I just like that number. That's really like the only reason I put 12,000, is just because I just like that number. It usually means that I have to read more than 25 books, and usually I do, but it's not really like a goal that I think that much about. Anyway, average time to finish 11 days, as we all know. The most moods that I read are reflective, emotional, dark, mysterious, tense, sad. I was just fucking going through it last year, I guess. I don't know. The most books that I read were of medium pace, and most of them were between 300 and 500 pages. I like to really dig into a story, you know? I mostly read fiction, but I also read some non-fiction. I'm pretty sure these are the memoirs that I read. And as we all know, the most genres that I read were literary classics, LGBTQIA+, romance, fantasy, and historical. I read one book that I put on my favorites. Is that? I think maybe that's How to Save Babylon, but I actually don't know. Oh, never mind. It was the Sunshine Cord. And here we have some graphs, and that's really it for the stats of storygraph. Okay, now let's move on to my spreadsheet. I update both Goodreads and storygraph, but I also keep my own separate spreadsheet because it has a bit more like statistics, and this is also where I kind of keep track of like all of my video ideas and when to release them and stuff like that. Like there's a little tab down here. Okay, let's look at my yearly stats for all of the books that I read in 2024. So I read a total of 31 books. Again, makes sense. So storygraph was pretty accurate in that one. I read 9,769 pages, but I have a suspicion that's because I haven't put in Nora Sakovic's The Sunshine Court. Let's do that real quick. Because when I read it, the page count was not yet on Goodreads, as far as I remember. Oh, it still isn't. Wait, 347 pages. So how much is it now? Now it's 10,116. I listened to 167.5 hours of audiobooks, and that makes sense because I usually read at the same time as listening to the audiobook, so that makes a lot of sense. I had 39 library checkouts, and I read 31 books in total. The way that I read the most was physically. Again, that makes sense because most of the books that I read last year were books that I already owned. Okay, now we get to the statistic about where I heard it most from, and it seems that I read most of the books being recommended to me by Tumblr. And of course this makes sense because Tumblr is like the only social media that I use. It is the only website that I use. Okay, so BookTube, Asian Directory, Libby pretty much tie in being number 2. But it seems I get most of my recommendations from Tumblr. Honestly, Tumblr has some pretty good recommendations. It's mostly classics, and they mostly like hit. They really do hit. I read mostly adult books. I only read 3 YA and 1 new adult, but that makes sense because new adult and YA is really not anything for me. I found that for new adult, it's like the writing quality is just not my preference, and for young adult, most of the books feel a bit too juvenile, so that makes sense. I also don't really pick up because of that. Even though I used to be actually a really avid young adult reader, but once I made the transition to adult books, I found that I could just not go back. So I read mostly books from the library, and the other half I read mostly owned books. I do have a preference for reading physically. Like I think I used to read mostly ebooks, but then I think I started reading my own shelf and annotating at the same time, so now I just prefer having a physical book to read, and honestly it's really good. Left most books unread rather than read that I borrowed from the library. But it was a pretty good statistics. Like it's only 59-41. You know, it could have been worse. Here we go. Okay, so the average rating according to my spreadsheet is 3.71, which I think is more accurate because I did include quarter ratings for this spreadsheet. Oh, by the way, the spreadsheet is made by a hardback hoarder. She made a really good template, and I've only adjusted some things according to my own needs or just stuff that I was interested in. So for example, like heard about from is a statistic that I included myself, and I also have statistics on DNF'd books, but we'll get to that. And then there were some columns that I deleted and others that I added. There were some categories that I also added or deleted. So I've pretty much like customized it a little bit from the template, and I continue to do so like year per year as I read more books and I discover more nuances, I guess. Let's talk about the subgenre that I read the most is romance and LGBT. Why did I really read that much romance last year? Anyway, let's get to author stats. I read mostly books by men. 16 men, 14 women, which is pretty good. It's almost half-half. But it makes sense because most of the books that I read were classics, and most classics are written by men. I read mostly books from Europe or by European authors, which again makes sense because I read a lot of classics, or they were white American at 7 books. So about 67.8 books were written by white people. It's usually better because I also read a lot of like Asian books. I get a lot of my recommendations from the Asian directory. But for this year, because I read a lot of classics, you know, obviously a lot of classics are written by white people. So it's okay. I'll try not to be a racist next year, but we'll see. Okay, and I also read mostly books that were new to me by authors who were new to me. 17 books. Only 13 books were by authors I'd read before. Okay, now we get to the statistic that I added, which is whether or not the author was from North America. And by North America, I mean both American and Canadian, because those two resemble each other very much, and they also seem to talk a lot about each other, so I just grouped them into one. Luckily, non-American has won out this year. Every year it's different. Some years the Americans win, but not this year. Okay, now we get to the statistics that I'm really interested in, which is statistics of the books that I DNF'd. So I added a whole other sheet of books that I DNF'd, and I filled it out pretty much the same as the books that I read. I just changed a couple of things, like I put down like how far I got and which month that I DNF'd it in. And I think that's really it. Everything else is the same. And also where I heard about it from. If we go back to the stats, one of the stats, obviously like this is still a work in progress. I don't know what other statistics I'm adding yet, but maybe there will be more next year. So according to the star ratings, I rated 11 books. Like I did not finish 11 books this year. The genre that I DNF'd the most was contemporary. This might be because it's the genre that I read the most, I think. Oh, actually it's not. Classic is the one I read the most with 12 books. Okay, so it seems that I just don't really enjoy contemporary, I guess. The next biggest genre that I DNF is horror, but it's only like 2 books. So you also have to take into context like how many books are we actually talking about here? It's only 2 books, and I think if I had DNF'd more books, it would look a bit different. But yeah, but that's interesting to see. DNF'd intended audience, I DNF'd mostly adult books, but that makes sense because I pick up mostly adult books. So there's a higher chance of me DNFing an adult book than a YA book, for example. And the format that I DNF'd the most was physical. And I DNF more books by women than by men this year. Damn. I guess I really am sexist. But yeah, that's really it. I think that's all the statistics that I have for this year. I'm such a statistics nerd. I love looking at stats and graphs and stuff like that. This was fun. I'm hoping to develop more of the DNF statistics for next year. Oh, I forgot to say, the average length I read before DNFing is 7%. And this is pretty accurate because I can pretty much tell whether I will like a book just from the first few chapters. So that makes a lot of sense, honestly. But yeah, that really makes it for the statistics of my 2024, my book wrap up for the year, I guess you could say. And let me know like how this really differs from your reading habits. And for now, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.